your Sensei Al Bob, and it's give or take 7 p.m. And I promised you a story. Let's see, where do we start? Um, First off, I think I have to turn that off. It's too distracting. I was always addicted to the TV, the screen. So that's why I don't have one. That's why I threw my television out the window in 1978. But whenever I'm at a place that has it, I usually watch too much of it. And my phone here, I could watch TV on it, but I'm way out in the middle of nowhere, so I get nothing. So let's go back, way back. And I was always a little peanut. For the longest time, I was the kid. Everybody else was older than me. You know, and I was surrounded by grown-ups, and I never felt, you know, distracted or threatened or upset, about grown-ups. I just was, watching them. They to me were better than watching TV. My mom and dad sure were. And my grandma was the best. She was the smartest, the best cook, the best everything. And she just, wherever she was in charge. And she didn't even have to pretend or act or put on any airs. She just was. She just walked through that door and everyone said, "Yes, ma'am." And she gave me that confidence that wherever I went, there I was. And I was there to interact with whoever I was with. And the best way that I could interact with them was, to be with them, you know, to not try to control them, try to manipulate them, to try to get over on them, to get anything out of them. Just, to experience the moment, to learn, to be there, to be real, to be awake. So, um, if I had any great gift, it was to be in the right place at the right time. And my whole life has been that way. Like as I told you earlier about today, going into that diner. That was the right place, the right time. And I helped about 8 different people there who, like, that moment will be seared into their consciousness. You know, that'll be the fork in their road, whether they take the fork or not, or whether they use that information I gave them, or whether they're just going to be scared and stick in their little envelope. But I don't think so. It like kind of affected all of them like they couldn't believe it. And I'm going to go back there too because that place is like one of those places I go by. Not every day, but at least regularly, at least 10 times a year. That's enough to stay in touch. Um, it's like John and John Boy. He's my friend, and I'll go. And the school is definitely a place I spent almost 15 years in, and I'm connected spiritually to that place. I don't even have to be there to be connected to it because it's part of me. Just like the deep forest, the deep green where I am, that was one of the Cherokee's major spots, and so is the school. And that's the connect. That's the same bioregion, same mountain range, the Blue Ridge. It's that space, that little bubble between the Blue Ridge and the Appalachian Mountains, and it energetically is pretty amazing. So, I mean, where I am, it's, I mean, the school is where the cave is and where the school bus rocks are above the cave. Um, it's quite a powerful spot, but that's just that spot. Where the deep green is, it's the whole thing. And so that, some moron in 1979 took this chunk of mountain and tried to make it into a gated community, and it didn't work out too much. So there's 60 lots, and there's only three houses, and I have a campsite, Cadillac campsite, a Rolls Royce campsite. I got a toilet and water and electricity, and I have a space that I can kind of heat, kind of. Um, but from where the water comes to where I use it, I have a hose that's 200 feet long, and in the middle of winter, that's not going to stay liquid, that's for sure. I mean, the other night when it was 37 degrees, and I woke up in the morning and there was frost on the ground on my water pipe, I knew there was going to be issues. But anyway, um, energetically, spiritually, harmonically, shamanically, this place is, that's why there are all these animal totems here. That's why Mama Bear is there, Mama Wolf is there, and baby Fox is there, and the bunnies are there, and Grandpa Wolf is there, and also Chief Owl. I had a friend of mine come visit me a couple weeks ago when we're sitting around. I have two fires, like one my kitchen fire circle, and then I have a ceremonial fire when you guys deem it to come, have a sweat lodge. It's hard to do a sweat lodge all by myself. I don't need to build a lodge and a fire. I mean, I can meditate and go to my sweat lodge in my sanctuary of my own choosing in my superconscious mind. So that energy has always been around me, meaning dimensional creatures, ghosts, extraterrestrials. I remember when I was 4 years old, and it was about 10 in the morning. It was one of those spring mornings where it just was winter and now it was spring, and it almost felt like summer. And my mom's out there, and she's smoking. She got a cigarette around her mouth, and she's hanging up the clothes on the clothesline. And it was about 10, 11 in the morning. The sun was coming up pretty high, and the sun was kind of going right across me and making long shadows that way. And I looked around, and I saw the reflection of myself, but it was bent out of shape like a funhouse mirror. And it was on the edge of where the garage was. So I'm a little guy, I'm about four. I get up. I was playing with the clothespins, and kind of got up and I kind of walked around to where it was, and there was a freaking flying saucer, shinier than a mirror, you know. And I couldn't even quite, flying saucer, what shape it was, I had no idea, but sure wasn't anything I'd ever seen before. And I looked at it, and I looked at it, and I kind of zoned out. I don't know if you've ever watched TV and you zone out. Well, that's kind of what I did. And then I heard my mother scream, and I woke up, and I turned around, and it was 4 in the afternoon. And she ran over, threw me in the clothes basket, and ran into the house and started drinking. And we never talked about that until I was in my 20s and she was in her 50s, and she was having her gallbladder removed, and you know, I was had my own place. I didn't have to go with my dad or anybody. I just used to go. She was in the hospital about 5 days, and because she ran this hospital back in the day, she had the presidential suite. So I went in there, and there were all these flowers. I brought her some flowers to keep my mom happy. All I had to do was bring her flowers, right? And a vase and scissors so she could clip them and arrange them. I mean, that was one of the things that made her most happy. And the last 30 years of her life, every time I'd come to see her, I always made sure there was a vase in the house and scissors, and I'd bring her flowers that she could arrange. I mean, that's all it took, you know? And she really appreciated that more than any other kind of anything. Just doing that all the time. It was something she truly appreciated. But anyway, we were sitting there, and we were just I brought Stuart Little. That was a book that she and I read when I was, I don't know, 5. And it was so funny. We laughed until we pissed ourselves. And so the two things that I could always make my mother happy was chocolates, flowers, and Stuart Little. So she's in the hospital. I bring her favorite chocolates. There was this chocolatier down on the avenue, and I got her some real tasty chocolates. She loved caramel chocolates. I did too. Of course, they rotted my teeth out of my head, but anyway, I took them there, and what's happening to me and John? You don't want to hear the story? Yeah, what's happening to me and John? I'm heading his way. I'm gonna go visit. I visit John. I don't live there. As of last December 26th, I have stayed at the school 32 evenings. That's it. A couple days here, a couple days there. Johnny keeps begging me to go to California, to go to Texas, to do that, and I think this is a good time. Right now I have no other kind of commitments, and if we did a road trip, I think that would be hilarious. It would be like Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis, right? And so I'm going to put that up to him. And if he agrees to all, meaning he can't just, oh, I'm so anxious, out in the middle of a snowstorm in Nebraska, he just can't, like, get out of the car. He can't do that. We have to. And if we get to a place and he can't, he has to put me on an airplane back to a place that I'm safe. Um, uh, yeah, I mean, John Boy and I mean, I've been laying down the 40 days and 40 nights because stuff is coming. And that would be hilarious. End of times, John and me on the internet doing live chat as flying saucers come down and extraterrestrials and Donald Trump rips out of his skin and is really Satan on television, and Mike Pence is taking it doggy style from what's his name. Who's the really smart one? Who's Jared. Jared is he's a real genius. How many Jareds do you know? The only other Jared I know is the guy from the Subway sandwiches, and I think those two are the same guy. They look the same, just like Mike Pence is actually Donald Sutherland in the Hunger Games because that's what he's going to be. So that would be great. Johnny Boy and I going through Houston as you know um, volcanoes are erupting off the Pacific plate through California and ripping California and Arizona in half, and Johnny Boy and I are surfing down molten core. Yeah, it'd be great, wouldn't that? And on the YouTube, yeah, I think yeah, you'd pay HBO to watch that. I know you would. Yeah. So you want me to continue with the story of my mom and I, and going from there to all the other people of paranormal and my experience with who's Lowland Daniel. Um, anyway, so there my mom and I are. She's getting her gallbladder. She had her gallbladder ripped out, and we sit in the hospital, and she goes, "Do you remember when you were 4 and we saw that object near the garage, and then time disappeared from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Do you remember that?" And I go, "Yeah." And she goes, "Look out the window." I look out the window, and that same craft was right there. And and we watched it for an hour. It was really far away, you know. It was like way uptown, but we could definitely. It was brighter than anything else, and it never was on the news, and and I've seen a number of flying saucers. Like I saw a flying saucer. I don't need. No, it wasn't a flying saucer, but it was something very strange. A friend of mine. Have any of you guys ever seen the movie Midnight Cowboy? And with Dustin Hoffman and the guy, and the guy comes from Texas and wants to be a gigolo, and he's dressed as a cowboy, and Dustin Hoffman's going to be his pimp, but he's a homeless guy, and they go through adventures to the point where he finally hooks him up, and they're finally going to succeed, and they go to a party at a loft, and it's in a loft that's way on top of this building. And the staircase, instead of going like this, like most staircases, it goes all one down, right? Well, that loft where that movie was shot was a friend of mine's loft, right? And he was on, and what it was there was some guy stuck another floor on top of a building, and the people who owned he kind of had the air rights, but he didn't have the rights into the building, so they wouldn't let him, just have the staircase that was there. So he had to put a staircase all the way on the side of the mountain, the building, and it couldn't go back and forth. It was one long thing, 6 stories down. So if you tripped, it was like 10,000 steps. If you tripped, that was it. You were going, 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 gone. And there was only two light bulbs, one at the top and one at the bottom. And in the door there was a little window, so the street light, whatever, daytime, nighttime, would come through that window. Anyway, so at his loft, I slept on his couch. We wake up. It's about, I don't know, 9:30. We're getting up. We're gonna go down and then walk over to Chinatown and have some dim sum. So he's on Houston Street, and the the building front door is out on Rivington, but his goes out onto Houston, and so we're walking down the staircase very carefully, and there's no banister, just the wall. You kind of have to lean on the wall and look at every step you're going down. So we're going down every step, and we get down there, and now that's very dark, 6 stories down, and it's bright sunny day, and we come out the door, and Houston Street is kind of just a couple blocks from the Bowery and where the bums are, and where this guy's loft was, there, the storefront out onto Houston, there was this kind of like bum Walmarts. All the stuff bums would need, underpants, socks, um, booze, really cheap booze, Ripple, and cigarettes. And most of the bums were military of some sort, who, were PTSD'd into being homeless bums. That's pretty much always the way. That's what stress and shock will do to you. And so we come out, and there are all these bums writhing on the ground. And the guy who owned the bum store was a real scumbag. And he would take these guys' checks. They get in the mail, and he would let them use his address as their mailing address, because they were bums, they had no address. And to get their checks, they needed an address. So he would get it. And they didn't have any kind of bank account. So he would put it in his account, and he'd give them, a line of credit. But, he would take most of it, and, they would just get what they wanted. Anyway, so we come out of the door, and it's like almost high noon. Everyone's, and Houston Broadway is one of the streets. It's right on the, uh, just a block down. So this is a very busy road. Houston is like a 3-lane highway going east-west, and Broadway is a block and a half that way. And that's, one of the, if not the major road in Manhattan, the second, Anyway, so We come out and the bums are writhing on the ground. Oh my God! Oh, look at here! Ah, ah! And we look up, and there are these ice cream cones the size of bread trucks. And they're about 60 feet up in the air, and they're twirling against each other. And these gigantic sparks are flying off, right? And we're just like, what the fuck? And there are all these people rushing off to lunch and run around, and they don't seem to notice. Now, the guy who ran the bum store, he's like, I'll go, Jesus, Jesus, Joseph, oh, Jesus, save me, Jesus, and it's like, my friend and I look at each other, like, what the? And the bumps are, and then all of a sudden, the two ice cream cones kind of squish into each other and go pop and disappear. Now, those things were up there sparking away for a good 10, 15 minutes. And you'd think someone other than the bums and the creep who ran the bum stores and us would notice. But nope, not on the newspaper, not in the TV, the radio. Nobody mentioned it. Not a word. Manhattan, beautiful sunny day, unbelievable, right? And we're like, so another unbelievable event in New York City. So I was a master electrician and I had a crew, and most of my employees were women because they're much better than guys. They didn't know what they were doing. They would ask me. I would tell them there was never any animus or upsetness, and they were happy to. They loved doing the work. They loved me paying them well. Um, they loved the fact that I was a guy who didn't give them a hard time. No matter how hot they looked, I wasn't like trying to hit on them because my whole thing with women was I wanted women to do the first move, right? To make the move, and then I would do the next, and then we do this little dance, and that was the level of respect and always being honest and always being there and always have I ever seen a ghost? Loads of them. Yeah, I mean they're just right between the cracks. Meaning, right now, this one over here. Right? And I look at it and it's not there. But if I don't look at it, if I'm looking at you, it's kind of right over there. They're dimensional, energetic characters that they're always around us. They are like ghosts are the shadows of ourselves. They're not somebody else. And the other YouTube I put on earlier around 4 p.m. when I was talking about how to deal with people, and that life is about experience and not winning or getting over or having, because, I'm living on nothing. And as my grandma always said, live like a millionaire, don't be one. So, I'm never, I'm in this nice place. I'm about to jump in the jacuzzi again. And, and, anyway, so there I was with one of my employees. Her name was Anna Jemsen, and she was from Sweden. And she was like everything you could ever imagine, Playboy or any archetype or any stereotype of unbelievable bombshell Swedish girl. That's her. But she was the most down to earth person. And she did things like she would shave her head or she had a beautiful head of hair and she would shave half of it. She would do things just to get a rise out of people. And she was a painter. And she had gone to this institute in Denmark, like the Vincent van Gogh Institute for Art or something. And she was such a good painter. They gave her a stipend, like for the rest of her life, to go wherever she wanted and go paint. And so she came to New York and had this garret, a true garret, you know? It was a garret, go look up YouTube, Google Garrett, artist, Garrett, and that's what she had. It was this kind of somebody, again, stuck like a box on top of another building. Wasn't originally built there, but she was there, and it was just a gigantic big space and had windows all the way around and skylights up at top, and it had light like you couldn't believe, and a view right down the East River. This was on the Lower East Side around Avenue D, and it was like below Manhattan Bridge. It's like between Manhattan Bridge and Brooklyn Bridge. And So it's a beautiful spot, and but very dangerous. This is like in the '80s when the Lower East Side was like skank, really bad. I again the video at 4. I told you about a movie called All Across the Universe, and that if you were to watch the movie between 4 and 7, you would have seen where it was like a perfect idealization of what I was going through during that time, same time, between 1964 and 1984. Anyway, so we finished work, and that day we were working in a over on the west side, and before we went over to, which is the West Village, where the gay folk, but they were all, that was a more upscale kind of. It was near NYU, and anyway, so we were working on a restaurant, and because restaurants and discotheques were my specialty in rich people's lofts. So anyway, I come by, we're walking down the street, and we're going into a bodega to get some stuff to brown bag lunch. Get some sliced meat and cheese and stuff to drink, and maybe some chips and fruit and whatever. And we just get on the job and work, and we want something. We'd make a sandwich. We wouldn't go out. We wouldn't waste time. Anyway, so we go there, and I'm looking through this bodega's refrigerator for stuff, and I look around. Where did Anna go? And Anna was like 6'2". I mean, she's taller than me, gorgeous, steel blue eyes, amazing face. Like I said, beautiful. She let her hair kind of grow, and she had breasts like you couldn't believe. They just kind of shot straight out and had these like nipples like the size of my thumb. And she would wear these Italian spaghetti T-shirts. That's it. So there's like there was nothing left for the imagination. So I'm looking around and I see the ceiling of this bodega, this hung ceiling, lit up really bright. And I go, what's that? And I walk over there, and there's Anna, and she's surrounded by TV cameras and TV lights and microphones on booms. And there's Jimmy Carter in overalls, and he's there with Habitat for Humanity fixing up some abandoned buildings, which we were doing. That was kind of our little what we did in the Lower East Side. We took over abandoned buildings, and we set up a lot of nonprofits to do this, because not one nonprofit fits every corner. Again, you need different. Anyway, so one of the ones that was more institutionalized, that was hooked up with Habitat, we started these projects, we got it rolling, and I got Habitat involved, and then left them with it so they could take all the credit. I just wanted people to be homed, because good old Ronald Reagan basically threw. And why crime went through the roof in the '80s and why jails got so full was that Ronald Reagan threw 3 million people out of mental institutions. He just closed them down. You know, he called that welfare. He called the mental institution welfare. That we had to cut our budget. It's just like these morons today. Our deficit went up by 40% in 1 year, and they're blaming it on Social Security, which is not welfare. Social Security, as you work every day, you're putting money into Social Security. It's like a savings account. It's your money. It's not the government's money. But they call that welfare, but it's not. Anyway, so Ronald Reagan said mental institutions were welfare, and so he kicked them all out on the street. So these people have been institutionalized their whole life. So they're not really tacked down to reality or materialism too well. They're like floating through the ether. And that's why the cops say, "Stop right there, sir." And the guy keeps taking his clothes off and trying to climb a tree. Of course, he ends up in jail. So anyway, Jimmy's there working on one of these Habitat for Humanity buildings that we helped start. And she's talking to him about it, and that she's living in a garret, and she's an artist. And Jimmy, when he ran for president, he did that interview in Playboy, and he said that he had lust in his heart. Well, boy, you could see the lust more than in his heart. He was springing it big time. And pretty much everybody else that was a guy was springing it too. So, anyway, it's like 9 in the morning and this is going on and going, boy, this day's going to be weird. So, um, I go, come on. Oh, good to see you, Mr. President. Come on, we got to go to work. So I grab her by the arm and, get the bag of lunch from the bodega guy and we walk over the west side. So we work all day. And, you know, about 3 o'clock, I go get some snacks and usually at 4 we break. And I would get, 3 or 4 real cold bottles or cans of beer and put them in a couple paper bags as a cooler. And we'd finish up whatever we had to do, and then we'd walk back to her garret, right? And, she had a bowl. And so we'd have the beers, and she had a nice little porch on the back of her garret looking out into the river. So we're drinking beer and smoking the bowl, and I look out over the river, and it's a beautiful. There is gray cloud, like fog, but it's summertime, and it's middle of the day, and there's not a cloud in the sky, and there should not be fog there. And it's rolling in, and it's like rolling, I'm looking at it, and there's the Brooklyn Bridge. You can see it plain as a day. It's like a mile away, and then it disappears. And that's just fog. It's not like fog because everything disappears. Everything goes into another dimension. So we're like going, what the fuck? Look at that. What's going on here? And all of a sudden, it's like the fog is coming up Avenue T. It's heading towards us. Now it's 100 yards away. Now it's 50 yards away. Now it's like right there. And then it absorbs her and she disappears. So I go, Anna, can you hear me? Can you see me? Anna, don't move. Don't walk off the cliff of the building, because the edge of the building was only about 20 feet over there. And she goes, yes, I can kind of hear, and I could kind of hear her. And I was not, if I tried to walk towards her, I'd be walking towards the edge of the building. If she walked towards me, she'd be walking towards the gate. So I said, Anna, walk to my voice, come to my voice, Anna, can you hear me? Walk to my, yeah. So she comes, and it isn't until she puts her hand on my chest and her other hand on my cheek that I can see her. And once she touches me, I can see her. I'm going, whoa, what is going on? And she goes, let's get out of here. So the only way to get out of there, to go down to the ground level, was we first had to go into her garret. So we go into the garret and we, slam the door, right? But before we do that, we're like holding each other, like going, ah! And we look straight up, and it's a blue sky. There is no fog. When you look straight up, there is no fog. You look out this way, I could barely see her face, and it was like right there. And we're looking up and looking at each other's face, looking up, and this is like too much. So we go into the garret. But before we do that, we look up one time and we see a little glint, little reflection. And we're like, well, what is that? What is that? What is that? And this thing comes down towards us. And then it comes right between, and it's a bubble. And I can see my own reflection and through the bubble to her face. And I see my face superimposed on her face. And she goes, I can see your face on my face. And we were like, whoa. So we run into the garret, slam the door, but there are all these windows, and it's summertime, so they all have screens on them. There's no, the windows have been lowered down, and to put them all up would take a bit of time because they're like up in the air. So we see the bubble, and it comes up to one of the screens, and it goes right through the screen. Doesn't pop. It goes through the screen, comes out the other side, and then it goes around, and it looks at all of Anna's paintings one at a time. And that's when we scream. We run out the other door. We go down the staircase. We go all the way down, and we come out on the street level. And the fog is like, you know, 20 feet above us. It's still pretty clear, on the street. And no one seems to be upset. Anna and I are like, we're crapping in our pants. And we run down to 7th Street and Avenue B, where there's this bar that if you've ever watched Law and Order or any kind of police story or movie about New York City, this bar is the go-to bar to do a bar scene in. So we go in there, and the guy looks at us, and we're like sweating, and we're like freaking out. And he goes, "What happened to you guys? This is like our bar." And we try to explain this, but we are like, ah, ooh, ah, So he just keeps pouring it for us, and then all of a sudden, the fog comes down to street level. It's like, and so he looks out the window, and there's a line, halfway through the window, you can't, it's just fog. The other, it's clear. It's like, what is that? That's it. That's it. And we told him it was the alien invasion of the body snatchers. I mean, it was like, so you're asking me if I've ever seen a ghost, if I've ever seen, well, man, it happens to me all the time. Guys, if you wanted to experience any of these things, I've offered you time and time again invitation to the deep green, and you would have met all the animal totems. They would have shown themselves to you. Because my friends who live around there, who come and visit, if they let themselves, the whole thing is you have to suspend disbelief. Because you see stuff all the time. You go, no, I'm not seeing that. But if you suspend that disbelief, then you'll really see stuff. And that's all it takes. It's not really, big deal. It's all around you. You just have to suspend your disbelief. You have to open yourself up to let your life be around you. I mean, what we have like chained ourselves up to the illusion of materialism, and I'm heading back to John Boy's tomorrow, and I've said, we should. This is the time. It's going to be cold here, and you're going to be miserable up at the school, and let's just batten down the hatch. I know how to close down the school because I used to always about now close down the school and go to my little. I had a beautiful little shack down in Grassy Pine Key in Florida, and that's where I would spend my winters until hurricane blew it away, and some guy offered me spare change just for the lot. So and I had to. That's when I was really sick. I couldn't. Once the hurricane blew it away, I couldn't go down there anyway. So this is a perfect time for John and I, and we could go to Texas, and I could, I met his wife and his kid, and I'm a trained counselor. I'm a negotiator. And John is constantly going on, oh, I don't want to see I'm going to have a new life. I'm going to be a rock star. I'm going to make movies. I'm the best movie maker. And it's like 5 things that he keeps going. I'm going to, over and over and over. And, Freud said, when you do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome, that's, pure sign of oops. So, and the other one of the 5 things is I'm going to get back together with my ex, and the only thing I really want is to have, the perfect family. Well, there is no perfect family. All you guys out there, does anybody out there have a perfect family? Is there anybody out there who really detests Thanksgiving? Who doesn't detest Thanksgiving? Oh, Thanksgiving's the best. Everyone's so nice to each other. Oh, we can say anything we want. No, it's not Minnie Mouse and Mickey Mouse time. No. But again, if you watch my 4 p.m. YouTube, where I was trying to say, guys, whenever you're dealing with people who you care about, or really anybody, period, don't project your upsetness on them. Fairy, fairy lady. What was that? Something about fairy lady. Who is fairy lady? Well, there's been a lot of fairy ladies in my life. The old crone, that's one. But the real fairy lady was Olga Kluber, on Lexington Avenue. I mean, that was truly fairyland. I mean, a crone, she was a crone, she was a woman of the woods. She was a, herbalist, a doctor. She had her, and she went to Oxford, the one, that one, the crone? Okay. Okay. So, I got to go to Trinity College in Dublin, Ireland. No, no, no. The first one. Oh, Uga Clover. Okay. Uga. She was a fairy. She was like Tinkerbell, you know. She was about 4'2", you know. But everyone saw her as something else, you know. Very few of us actually got to see her for what she really was, you know. And if you saw oh, the Star Wars film, where it's, Luke's on that island that he was on. That's Ireland. That's on the west coast of Ireland. Just it's an island off of the Dingle Peninsula. And I used to live there, not on the island, because getting out there was a bitch. And it was, just when I was in really great shape, it was terrible. Man, if I tried to get there, I'd kill myself because it was, a mountain coming out of the ocean. And the steps, you took your little dinghy up to these steps, and these guys chopped it out, and they were like slicker than snot. And anyway, that's right where she didn't live on that island, but the West Coast Road, right, you went out of Skibbering, go towards Glendore, and the mountain comes straight down, straight down. I might even have some pictures of this. Let's see. Rotate your camera. Rotate the device. How about that? This is one of my many photo books I just happen to have in my. Can I do that? Will it do it? Yeah, much easier. Okay, let's see. This is Asheville in the '90s. This is Carlos back in the '80s. Let's see, where is Ireland? Here is a beautiful woman. I helped deliver her baby because the old crone taught me how to do this. Here's on top of this is on top of Anna's roof, and there's Sweet Paula. She was quite an interesting woman. And if you ever heard of the story of Scar, the woman I lived with in Tortola, this is her after she went home to her mother and went through about 20 plastic surgeries on her face. Her eye had been ripped out, and that's a glass eye, and they reconstructed her whole face, and they hadn't quite reconstructed her chin yet. So if you go back to, that's on Johnny John's. And here's my second wife, Rita, the one who died in my arms. This is at the 20th anniversary, 25th anniversary, or 30th, one of those, of Woodstock. This is the Woodstock, right? And here is a group of alternative healers. I had a look how big I was. I'm like bigger than this is when I worked for the Desperate Lawyers, but I had a medical center of alternative medicine, and I was the shamanic healer. She was a great nurse and physical therapist. She was a doctor who definitely had she was a student as I was with Chief Two Trees, and she was, and these girls were a thing, and I was just one of the girls. Here's my anorexic daughter. Here she is before she was anorexic with her buddy. There's my dog, my sweetie. She was the best. She was way smarter than I was. She was my. I had these little Christmas things I got from the Dollar Tree. Where is so? This is back in the '70s. Is when we did Universal Peace Day. Here's a theater in an abandoned building. Let's see. Yep. See, there's a mural I did. With comic and tragic mask, and I used to do this kind of art, and then so this guy is he was a trip. He was Italian, Sicilian. Um, he played the game the best. He got a PhD from NYU and didn't do anything. We did all the work, Carlos Altamani. And so these are pictures that I took that I kind of, put on top of a mural that I did, and he took credit for it. So, and then here's some friends of mine who died of AIDS. Oh, this is I don't know if I ever told you the story about when the Mossad tried to kill me. Well, here's the guy who first tried to kill me, and Yos, he was a Mossad agent, and because I was with a musician that he really adored, he didn't kill me, and I introduced him to the musician. And here is the guy Mossad sent after that both of us. And I got him, introduced to Lisette Modell, and because he always wanted to be a photographer. So after the third Mossad agent came and, we introduced him to having a real life, they stopped sending people after me. Oh, she was a sweetie, girlfriend of mine. We did a TV show on Manhattan Cable. And this was here's me, and this is the old crone's great-granddaughter. And so this is what the old crone looked like when she was 19. But so this girl, she's in her 40s, and she and her friend, I told you a story about her and her friend came and visited me, and they were both very powerful crones, but she was the real deal. Her friend was, just putting it on. Oh, so there are no pictures of Ireland in that book. But let's see, go back to, yeah. So, so Olga Kluver, right? So I met her when I was about 10, right? And I was started to work for the stalls, and I used to walk down Lexington and then around 30 something street before 34, 38, 39, somewhere around there. I would cut over east and go to their shop. But I'd walk by, and Lexington was like Europe. I have no idea what it's like now, but it had all these like 6-story buildings, very old. It looked like Europe. And every 4 or 5 blocks was like, it was the German part, there was this part, and there was a lot of New York that was like that. Harlem was like that. The West Side was like that. So New York isn't like that anymore. It's totally, been monetized. And I would go by her store, and there are all these curiosities inside. And they were like, oh, little wind-up dolls, but they were like, real people. But if you just looked at it, they look like toys. But if you looked at it from the side of your eye, and you were catching other frequencies, and you suspended your disbelief instead of going, "Oh no, it's not that." You would see, "Oh, what are those guys? They're real little creatures, right?" And so I'd walk by and I'd be really, really intrigued, but it was always, "Oh, I got to get to work," right? And when I came home, usually I was dropped off at my parents' place, right? Before I got my own spot. The first 2.5 years, basically all I did at work was take care of Grandpa Stoll and make sure he didn't walk in front of a bus. And he told me stories, and he had keys to everything. He had wired he had the first master electrician's license in the United States. He worked for Edison and Tesla. He had wired everything. He had wired the subways. He had wired the Empire State Building, the Chrysler Building. He had wired the Woolworth Building. He had keys to all of this, and keys to doors that people didn't even know existed. So we could go into all of these things, and he'd show me, and this is how we did this transformer, because most of these things were very strange kind of technology. They were more Tesla than Edison. So, especially the Chrysler Building. The Chrysler Building was wired without wires. It was an induction coil at the top and bottom, and all of the lights were neon, and all the motors were, synchronous alternating servo motors that had no wires. The coil inside the motor picked up the juice that came from the coil at the top of the building and the bottom of the building. Wireless transmission of electricity. And the only reason why it didn't stay that way was that Mr. Chrysler was pedophile. But they didn't call it that. And they called, he was a man that had special tastes. He had more money than God, so he could do whatever he wanted. But Mr. Morgan had pictures of him expressing his special tastes, and so he said, "Listen, you better put wires in that building, or you're going to have pictures in the New York Post of you expressing your special taste." So, they changed it. Yep. So, one day in our walkabouts, me and Grandpa Stoll, we walk by Olga's little curiosity shop. Yeah, he goes, "You walk by this place coming to work, don't you?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Did you ever look in the window?" "Oh, yeah." He goes, "Well, what do you see?" I said, "I don't know what I see." He goes, "Well, that's a good answer." He goes, "You want to go in?" I go, "Can we?" And I said, "Every time I try to go in, he said, don't worry about it. I know the lady who runs it." So, Grandpa Stoll knew everybody. And not only that, everyone owed him a favor. It was unbelievable. He was the guy who I learned, he and my grandmother were the two people who could walk into any room and everyone called them ma'am or sir and let them do whatever the heck they wanted. And I picked that talent up from them. Now, a lot of people are amazed by that. A lot of other people are jealous of that. Like the other day when I was in Boone, North Carolina, where App State is, it's a college town, and they got all these, ale houses, beer halls, whatever you want to call them, all over the place. And there's one that's quite nice, and that the people there are quite nice. They like me. They like my stories. They like me reading their palms and their cards and their stuff. And the guy who owns it lets me hang out there, and people, I have a little basket, and I give them readings. Anyway, long story short. But most people, I just give them a reading. I don't charge them anything. I have a basket there. If they can pick up, maybe they should throw some, tip in there. That might, but most people are clueless. Except for those people today. They were very nice. So I was there, and I've been there now a couple months. And so, that's my place to go Thursday and Friday, because there are these 10 women who show up there who really like me, and I might get lucky, you know. And those 10 women, all very special, all really smart. They're all not just the usual chewing gum. I'm going to college. No, they're like, and they love asking me questions and having me tell them stuff. And then they go look it up and go, you were right. My teacher said you were wrong, but you're actually, so. I mean, a lot of people get upset with that. I was at this one university, and this guy tried to always trick me, see if he could find me, and he would ask me a question, and I'd say, well, either I don't know, I'd say, well, I don't know. Or I would say, well, I think it's this, or you should go look at that. And he would get very upset because pretty much everything I was, where he stopped trying to trick me. Anyway, so there I was in Boone in this place, and outside they have bean bags, and bocce, and all kinds of stuff. And I'm pretty good at bean bag and bocce. And this one guy, he had some really nice cigars. Now I don't really smoke, but I do like a nice cigar. And so he had a bottle of very nice whiskey, and from the bar, and he was just pouring it out there. Totally, you're not supposed to do that, but hey, the owner was letting him do this, and so I'm just sipping on one little bit of nice whiskey, and he's getting pretty plastered. So I'm smoking a cigar, and you're not supposed. You want to smoke? You smoke outside with the bean bags. You're not supposed to smoke inside. So I got this cigar in my mouth, and I want to get something inside the bar. So I turn around and I walk through, and everyone outside goes, "Ugh," but they're too drunk to say stop or don't do that. And I go in, and there's a big sign that says no smoking. I walk right by it, and I go over and I ask the bartender for what I wanted, and he's looking at me smoking a cigar in a place you're not supposed to smoke. He doesn't say anything. He gives me what I want. I turn around, I walk out. And they're all in awe. And then the owner comes out. He goes, "Al, did you know you're not supposed to smoke inside?" I go, "Oh yeah, I guess I should, but I don't smoke." He goes, "You had a cigar in your mouth. You were smoking it. Smoke was coming out of the cigar. Smoke was coming out of your mouth. Smoke was coming out of your nose." Really amazing was most people who go in there and with a cigarette or anything burning them. He said, "No one told you not to do it. I didn't even tell you not to do it. The bartender did, the manager, no one said, Al, get out. Stop, you can't smoke in here." He goes, "That's never happened. How'd you do that?" I learned that from Grandpa Stahl and my grandmother, and it's not something that you do, it's what you are. And that's what Olga Kluber was. It wasn't what she was doing, it's what she was. And so she had command of everything paranormal and supernatural. And it wasn't scary or the devil or Satan or any of that. And it was the different layers of what experience is. As you ascend spiritually, you can. So this woman was, or creature, or whatever, she was, she chose to stay in this three-dimensional material world to help us along, And she's the closest thing to Tinkerbell I ever saw. Now, I've seen a lot of spirits. I've seen a lot of ghosts. I've seen a lot of, things that people would get scared about, demons, right? I hung out with, I've known some pretty good demons. I've had some friends who are demons. And they just represent a certain dynamic. And God, which is love, has created all of this. So God, which is love, has created all of it. None of this can be bad. It's how we represent it, how we, suspend our disbelief, how we prejudice our life. And that's the real problem. If, Donnie can call Hispanic folk criminals and bad dudes. No, man, if you ever want a nice, good, straight up neighbor, hardworking, you know, have a Hispanic. Our little mountain town is turning Hispanic because no one will do the jobs that are there, which are Christmas tree jobs and really crappy. They're not even factory jobs, and these people do it happily, and they're happy that their kids are going there, and the teachers, like the white kids whose parents are totally whacked out on OxyContin and meth, and those kids are soon to be there too, because they've graduated high school. The ones who had anything on the ball, I got them all to graduate high school, in the last 10 years. And the ones that had anything on the ball either joined the military or left, or learned to, help me build something, learned a little bit about electric, how to hold a hammer, how to use a skill saw. But the ones that are left, they can't even use a tape measurer, and they don't want to work. So, and they start selling drugs thinking that you make a lot of money and they don't have to do anything. Well, they end up dead. Where all the Hispanics that are moving in, they're not bringing drugs. They're doing the jobs. They're being righteous. And so there are a couple people. There's 4 new businesses in our little town, and they've all been started by Hispanic folk who first were like, doing people's laundry and cutting, and then they saved every nickel they had. And this one family started a great Mexican restaurant, and the white chuckleheads gave him a hard time. And the woman, instead of getting upset with them and yelling at them or trying to, fight them, she basically went out and fed them. And they said, wow, best food. And then they became #1 client. And as we started out doing abandoned buildings in New York and the police came after us big time, we didn't fight them. We read them poetry. We made them cry. We got them on our side. When I worked at stopping the Shoreham Power Plant, one of my things was to go get the police involved. And I brought Dr. Golf Whitlam, who was from Brookhaven National Laboratory, who invented nuclear health physics during the Manhattan Project, and had him explain radiation to every policeman in North, Suffolk County and Nassau County. So when we did civil disobedience, the cops were on our side. They wouldn't arrest us. So whenever you do any kind of civil disobedience, the best thing is to have police on your side. And so, Olga Kluber was like having all of existence on your side because she had this big mirror on the back of her curiosity shop that you could walk through. But you had to suspend your disbelief because if you go, I can't walk through this, I can't walk through that, boing, you couldn't walk through it. But if you said, you were like right behind her and she said, come on in, boys, we'll have some tea. Now, the first time I walked through that mirror, I was with Grandpa Stoll and he was like right behind her and he was like, a good 6 foot something. And I was only 12 years old, and I was still in my short. I didn't really sprout up until I was about 15. I was still a peanut, and I was right behind him. And she's like 4 foot something. I'm 5 foot something. Grandpa Saul's like 6 foot something, and she's walking. He's right behind her, and I go, well, if they walk through the mirror, so can I. Bing, walk right in, and the smells. You could taste the smells. It was like going to India. And we were in a forest. I mean, this is on Lexington Avenue in Manhattan in a curiosity shop. We walked through a mirror and we're in India like in year 7. England hadn't been there yet. And there were all kind of avatars there. And that's when I learned that we are avatars, that our consciousness and spirit isn't in this body. This is just an avatar. And she told me that, the first time I walked through the mirror, she said, so you're a special young man. And I said, what? She goes, well, Grandpa Stoll, I mean, he goes without saying, but you're a young guy, you are, yes, you are Grandpa Stoll's adept, but, you're still, how old are you? 11, 12? And, I said, yes, ma'am. He says, no, no, call me Ulga. Okay, Ulga. So, you know, um, I did, I don't know, back around YouTube 50, somewhere in the beginning. It's like, it's an hour video on how to meditate, you know, and I think it's how to set yourself free or something of that nature. And and for a good hour, I bring everyone watching the video through a guided meditation. You know, a lot of people have, and whatever you want to talk to me, just you and me, contact me on Gmail, the Dude Awake 42 Gmail. Okay. And I'd love it if you would go and read my writings on my blog, which is xratted.blogspot.com. And give me some feedback on that. And I kind of set it up as it's called Griot Publishing. I mean, it's there for everybody to put stuff on. I'm learning, and I still haven't Patreon account. I want to put one up so I can, spare change y'all. About 200 of you watch the weeks. If everyone threw in like $5 a month, I'd have more than enough to survive relatively well. I mean, I'm surviving great as I am, but a few more dollars wouldn't hurt. Just like today, when the guy just laid me some money, it was like, I didn't beg, I didn't do anything, didn't ask for anything. I paid for my bowl of soup and but he saw me like going, I had like, paid it in change. Most people in a restaurant don't give dimes, nickels, and quarters. And so he took it, but then he gave me 20 times that back and told me, come back, I have questions to ask you. So, I'm getting a client base, I guess. So, okay, let's see what some of you guys have said. Hello. John. Obama. First one. I saw you. I met an Irish Crown video, and now here I am. Good, good. What do you think? Yes. All these folks who have ascended into the higher realms, see, you have to realize that time doesn't exist. The Big Bang was us leaving the garden. We became self-conscious, not conscious, self-conscious, which it was like breaking that mirror that I walked through. Because on the other side of Olga's, curiosity mirror, that's where the Garden of Eden was. You know. So when we, through our, letting our ego transform us into this laggard creature, this bag of water, it stuck us in this two-dimensional materialistic world. And the third is just, an illusion. The third is time. And so there is no time. So Bing Bang, that bang and the end of the bang is all in the same transzillionth of a nanosecond. It's just that we have so limited ourselves, we can't experience all of that totality. So we have to string it out in a linear experience, that is an illusion and very limited. And so folks who can navigate the multidimensionals, they are not tied down to time and space. Now, this life that I'm, in this avatar here, I've been able to, and everyone can, if you just meditate, breathe 20% more and breathe out 30% and illuminate yourself through your imaginary mirror and go into your subconscious, which is your Akashic record, and then use your Akashic record to, enlighten yourself on what's going on. And then you pick, did you ever read the book, The Nine Doors? Well, one of those doors is in your Akashic record, and it'll take you to your sanctuary of your own choosing, your superconscious mind, where love lives inside of you, because we are co-creators. That's where our, this body here is just an avatar. Our consciousness is in a, some kind of server. And that server is our superconscious mind. And that's where love, or God, but God is a very two-dimensional limiting word, but some of you can only relate to that. But in true essence, love is the only thing there is, the only thing in existence. And that's why the yin yang symbol is quite a good metaphor for this, because circle is the event horizon. The squiggly line at S there is our path. One side is dark and the other side is light, and both sides are love. The blackness is the totality of everything, and the whiteness is the illumination of everything that gives us a sensibility of the dimensionality of what it is. So, and the two dots, the black dot in the white space and the white dot in the black space, is chaos. Because if we did not have chaos, we would just be, couch potatoes. And that's why there is no true evil in our linear world. We experience true evil because that is the suspension, that is the disbelief of love. And the only way that you can get rid of evil is to suspend your disbelief of love. Where, when you can suspend the disbelief of love, that's when, like snapping the fingers, we're back in heaven. And, the ascended masters, after they put their time in the ugly bag of water and learn how to navigate that, they ascend. They no longer have to reincarnate. And our reincarnation is just love gives us as many shots at getting it right as we need. Everyone wins. Everyone succeeds. Everyone gets off the bus and goes into heaven. The only hell that exists is the one we manufacture ourselves. So Olga was she stayed there. So I met her at 11. The last time I saw her was before I met Rita. And a lot of the esoteric stuff that I got in through Grandpa Stoll, Olga, and Billy Kluver, right? His last name sounded like Olga's, but wasn't. And Billy was quite an interesting guy because he was a physicist. He was at Oxford, and he was at the Boson in Paris, and he got really interested in art and what was going on in Paris. While Grandma Moses was the only thing going on advertising was the only thing going on in America. He brought all of modern art, Billy did, to New York City and had the Armory show. He came from a pretty rich family, so he had his connections, and so he got that, rented it, and brought all these Duchamp and all these amazing European artists of the latter 19th century and early 20th century, and had that show there. And that armory became the Museum of Modern Art. And it that whole movement, the rich people embraced it, and that's why the Whitney was built and the Guggenheim, because all these rich people wanted to have their own Museum of Modern Art, right? Put their collections in them to self-aggrandize themselves. But they, put enough money behind it that those institutions also helped a lot of other people do their art. And that's what collaborative artist projects was. My exposure to all those things, through the prep schools I went to, through the rich people who said, "Oh boy, you're a smart kid. We're going to turn you into something that we can use." I mean, Billy Kluver was connected to the Council on Foreign Relations. This guy got a Nobel Prize for discovering background radiation of the universe, and he was connected to every like the U.S. Psychotron, you name it. He was connected to every esoteric scientific organization there was, and and he was a simple guy. I mean, he came from a very rich family. He was amazingly educated. He had the most amazing mentors, and that's kind of why he picked on me. He said, he kept saying, "You remind me of me when I was your age." He kept saying that. There were a lot of people who kept saying that to me. They wanted me to follow in their path, and now I'm doing the same thing to you guys. But they actually like physically put me places and made me experience things, which was great. Meaning, and I had an open enough mind not to be scared by that, and to embrace it and to appreciate the blessing that it was, and didn't hold myself to any expectation from all of these people. And Olo Kluber was a person who truly gave me the 411 on not having expectations, because then you miss the boat on what life's about, the experience. And the other thing she gave me the 411 on was patience and to listen to other people. And that's why I miss students, because mostly I listen. Now, this is a pretty limited form of that because you ask me stuff and it goes away, meaning before I start to read it, it disappears. And how many times should you go through that mirror? Lots. I mean, over a 25-year period, quite a few. Because especially when I was a young guy and you know, I was either in prep school or I was working for Grandpa Stoll or I Hoover or Billy. So that put me there. But then as I got older and had all these experiences, see, I never, one thing that some people would call a mistake I made or limitation was like my first wife. I met her on the subway. She was really amazing. She kind of realized that wow, this guy, I gotta. And she got off the same, subway stop I was and followed me home. And the day I met her, she moved into my loft, right? And then we spent 8 years together. And the first 6 or 7, yeah, that's dragon energy. Yep, I am a dragon. I'm an Aquarian, and my year I was born was a dragon year. So yeah, and I lived in a Japanese Zen temple, so I kind of have that experience. I was another teacher. So, long story short, one of the things that my wife used to get really upset about was that I would never argue with her. I would constantly go, "So, honey, what can I do for you? What's going on? Tell me." And I never got jealous. I mean, she would go flirt and all kinds of stuff, and I knew that she was always coming home with me. So, she wanted to flirt with some guy, not a problem. And then she'd feel guilty because I had female friends I wouldn't flirt with, and those friends would become her friends. And so there was always this one side of it that she liked, that she got exposure to all these things that she'd never be exposed to, right? But the thing that she was like semi jealous of or upset with me that I shared myself with lots of other people. And I wasn't just a photographer, I was a painter, I was a theater person, I was, an astrophysicist, I was a philosopher, I was into, and I brought her to all these things. And she was really smart. She could really understand and appreciate, but she felt, I don't even know how to put it, limited or, I mean, no one put her down or gave her a hard time because she was my wife. Oh, that's Alice, so she's part of the club. And so one time she made me actually, because we had a photo studio together, DNA, Donna and Albert. And we got to be well known, and we never put our names on our photographs. But man, you could tell whose were whose. Meaning, when if you see any of the images I take, you know, they're pretty. It's like I write my name all over it by how I take that picture, how I am seeing. Where Donna was a truly schooled, brilliant photographer, and what she was really best at was the darkroom. She could manipulate the image. I mean, I was a good printer, but I had to like get in the zone. But printing photos and developing film, it's chemistry. And you got to do it. You can't. There's no fooling around. You miss the mixture of the chemicals by a few degrees. It does something different. Now, me, I was an alchemist. I just kind of threw the shit together and put it thing. And however it turned out, I could navigate it. I could use it to make it look interesting. Oh wow, that looks like sepia type. Oh, look like a little degree, every little everything, and she'd have a perfect print, and they were great pictures. But mine had stains on them, but it was like art, and it was like a painting. It was like. And so at a certain point, at our level of success, she said, okay, we're not going to have the studio anymore, and you can't take pictures. I said, what? I said, Donna, I took pictures way before I even met you. I was, Lisette Modell and Carter Brissett were my teachers way before I met you. Those guys were my buds. And it's not like I joined the new school and paid $300 a class. No, the people I hung out with, they had to invite you in. But she goes, no, but you do all this other stuff. So I don't do all that other stuff. So you just do all that other stuff and I'll do the photos. I said, okay, Donna. But I take pictures not just as a photographer, I do it as an anthropologist. I'm documenting. She goes, okay. And she came out and she gave me a box of Diana cameras because we used to have a photo class and I got this deal on. And Diana cameras are those throwaway cameras that you get at I don't even know if they make them anymore. But it was a 2.25 a negative, so it's a big negative rather than a 35 millimeter, which I liked. And they were color. And they had the light leaks, and so it was like really interesting. So she goes, "You can use this camera, but nothing else." And I had a bunch of Nikons and Leicas and Hasselblads, and I basically gave her all my cameras. She didn't like Nikon, so I kept my Nikon, but that was from my newspaper days. And but I gave her. She was Miss Leica, and so I gave her all my Leicas. And she had a focal mat that's a Leica enlarger, and I had one, and we got them from Nazis, and these Nazis, I mean real Nazis, not teenage boys wearing outfits, but guys who were like 110 years old who work with Werner von Braun and Dr. Mengele. Anyway, because in those esoteric organizations I belonged to, there were a lot of those guys there. And they were the guys who were fooling around with dimensions. And most of the weird shit that's going on in our body politic is being precipitated by what those morons were screwing around with. And the only way you couldn't power your way through multidimensional physics. The only tool you could use it to get the equation right was love. And the who taught me that was Billy Kluver, Olga Kluver, and Grandpa Stahl, and my grandma. But she was just unconditional love. She wasn't talking about physics. These folks were, and Billy and Grandpa Stahl were talking about scalar technology. Olga was talking about dimensional technology, which is a whole nother. That's more the alchemy. That's what alchemy is dimensional physics. And the lead you're working with is your bag of water and the trace elements in it. And the gold you're going for is your higher self, not gold you can put in your pocket, or that's in Fort Knox. 1 hour and 25 minutes. So let's see. Interesting little tidbits about Olga. So she had this curiosity shop, and she had a doppelganger, a woman who was like her avatar, meaning it was this woman who wasn't 4'2", but she was like, not quite 5'7". She was about my height when I was 11 years old before I sprouted up at 15. I got to be 6 foot at 15. I went from being 5'7" to 6 foot, like bingo, in less than a year. And this woman's name was Olga Kluver also. And I don't know whether, I mean, I was never told the where all of that came from. Why Billy he spelled Kluver a different way, and he was Swedish. Olga it was more German, and it was old Germanic, like way back in the day. And her doppelganger was the same. And so her doppelganger had a auction house called a Big Apple Auction House. You might Google that. I don't know if it's still around or if there's history of it. But Olga was truly freaking nuts. And she would, all these shows you see, these guys, going into, people's houses and going through their garbage and stuff and getting stuff and, selling it. Well, she was that to the 10th power, you know. And she was one of the first people, she had a storage facility in Brooklyn that she just did and only kind of rented those spaces out to people who had interesting stuff that she had a sense that once they put it there, they were never coming back for it. And she had them sign a contract that if they didn't pay every month, and after the third month, it was hers. I mean, it was truly amazing. This girl, she was like something out of Dickens. And I don't want to say that my little Tinkerbell Olga Kluver possessed the little taller Olga Kluver, and the taller Olga Kluver looked like a gnome. She looked like she lived underneath a bridge, and for a number of years, so she had this auction house and she had this storage place, but they were just businesses, and she kind of lived in them, and she wasn't a dimensional creature like Tinkerbell Olga was like, but kind of Tinkerbell Olga could possess her. And so Tinkerbell Olga could walk around, her shop, and people would have the suspended disposition of that girl. She doesn't have wings. She's not glowing. No, she's just a short woman. And because you look straight at her, she was just a short woman. If you look sideways at her, she had wings and she glowed and she was flitting around. So, but if you're looking straight at her, you'd say, how did you get from there to up there, like in a nanosecond, So, she would take German gnome Olga over, and we'd go out to dinner. We would go out of her shop. We'd go about. And I can't explain it any better than that. But it was, so I knew both those women for about 10 years. And I tried to bring Donna there, but it somehow broke the spell. And because Donna was quite psychic herself. Her grandmother was a crone, and came from Dingle and Cork, And during World War II, she married an American, and after the war, came back and went shopping because Ireland was third world up until it joined the EU, and she got tired of that. And by coming into total materialism and shopping every day at Sears and getting a car and having house in Long Island, and her husband being a truck driver, but they were both super Irish. And so they brought Donna up like she was a little, Irish lass, and Donna had to learn how to clog and how to play the accordion and how to play the fiddle and dance Irish tunes and play them and sing them. And she would go, like all the other Irish immigrants, and go to the community Irish center and play the music and dance. But she hated it. She hated it. And she escaped. She at 16, she Donna was meticulous at everything she did. She was brilliant at everything she did. So her mother was kind of a slug and was a dental technician, and they didn't have daycare. So Donna used to. She was the first one out of the gate, and so she would go to work with her mother. So by the time she was 11, she was a better dental technician. I mean, she was like me as an electrician, but she was a dental technician. So she started to do the work at her mother's job, and her mother's boss realized that Donna was the best person, better than him. She let him drill people's teeth. He'd knock them out, and Donna would do the dental surgery. So at 16, she had saved up enough money. She graduated high school, had her diploma. She was really smart. She zoomed through high school, and she got out of Long Island. She bought herself a a brand new Volkswagen Rabbit and drove to San Francisco and got herself in the Art Institute and graduated that and then got a master's at the Art Institute, which is in photography, very difficult. And she became Annie Leibovitz's first assistant. And she became Rolling Stone's first darkroom chief because she was like the Albert Einstein of the darkroom. And she came back from San Francisco on the down low and was living in Brooklyn, and that's when I met her. But Donna had the crone in her, she had the crone gene in her, and it was driving her nuts. And she had all these jerky boyfriends who kept calling her crazy, where I could see right away this girl had the touch, or as they say, the knack. And I'd say, Donna, you are blessed. You are great. Let this. But she had already really, I don't want to say harmed herself, but, painted herself into a corner. The 8 years that we were together, she loosened up a lot and really, really embraced that back that she had. But when we broke, she went, it was like a hard break, like Brexit. It was a hard break. And she didn't, she came, I want to get a divorce. I said, okay. And she wanted to go another path. I wanted her to be happy. So I had no problem. I said, sure, whatever you want. I gave her everything she wanted from the stuff that we had because I didn't care. And never really saw her again. She wouldn't make contact, wouldn't connect. And there were a number of shows that she was in because of friends of mine who had that gallery, and she made the connection with them. And they would call me up and say, "Oh, Donna's having a show here. Should I have it here?" I said, "Of course, have it there. Well, that's of course you can sell her stuff if you can represent her. No, go for it." And a couple of times I said, "Well, she's going to be here at such and such a time," and because I had no idea where she was, because I didn't I didn't have I don't even do Facebook anymore. A person put me on Facebook. I'm there somewhere in the Facebook world. But anyway, a number of times, about 3 times, I would go to her opening, and I'd always bring her a dozen flowers. She loved red roses. And, she would and the first time she cried and hugged me and told me how much she missed me and didn't understand why she had to do what she did, but she did what she did. And I said, "Baby, whatever makes you happy makes me happy." And then she'd cry even more. And then, she'd get pissed off and, oh, I have to be that way. Can't you get mad at me? Can't you spit on me? No, 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 I love you. And a couple more times I saw her at shows that people gave me a 4-1 on, but then she kind of disappeared. She stopped doing shows. She went into private collections and stuff like that. And anyway, so everyone has the knack. It's whether they bring it out or whether they paint themselves into a corner and just live a miserable life, quiet life of desperation, you know. And I'm doing these YouTubes because 40 days, something's going to happen. I between my morning YouTube and my 4 p.m. YouTube and this YouTube, I put up some stuff that I had on my phone to clear it out. And the ones, a week before, a month ago, when I went to do a YouTube with John where I played Elvis. And for some strange reason, I mean, I did a live stream chat of that, so you can go see what it looked like from my camera. But John never, has not put anything of me other than he has repackaged a number of, when I was staying at the school for about, 14 months, with, weeks and months of chunks of where he would throw me out. And, John, basically would throw me out every day. But then I could talk him down and balance him. No, 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 stay, please stay, please stay. Okay, fine, stay. But the 26 times that he physically threw me out, no, he didn't physically throw me out. He was like, I can't take it. You're making me anxious, blah, blah, blah. And instead of me taking the 10 hours to walk him back, unwind him, I said, sure, fine, okay. And I was ready for an adventure. I had no money in my pocket. I had no idea where I was going. It was snowing, it was raining, it was midnight, whatever it was. I'd say, okay, time to go. And I would go on and I'd have a true, amazing adventure. And I think I've told you about a few of them. Like the first time he threw me out, I ended up, I was working at a church and I had to key. So there was a way up in the bell loft, and I would just go up there. I put a bed up there, and I slept there until one of the old biddies noticed that I was staying there because I would be there before she was, and I'd make her breakfast. And she, so. And the guy who got the job, he loved the the rap of being a social activist. Well, I was his action coordinator, and and it was a really beautiful church in the middle of Roanoke, and it was like one of the oldest ones. But the people who were there were all white, and 1 year half of them died, and that's why they hired him because he was in his late 40s, 50s, and they wanted him to rebuild the church and make it something so when they died, God could say, oh, look, yeah, yeah, he did all this good stuff for everybody. So that was his like marching orders, but they kind of, they were paying him more than he ever got paid before because he was never quite head of a church. And he was running his gig, which was he took college kids and basically brought them to the Salvation Army, and they took cans out of cartons and they put them on shelves, and they called that volunteering. So they got credits for it on their, they had to do some kind of volunteering, and the school paid him $300 a head for them to go do that. And I did, I showed them shamanic ceremonies, and I did the Zen tea ceremony. The first, they get off the bus and they come into the church, and I would do that. And he didn't give them any theology. I gave them this kind of interesting stuff until certain people were like, "How dare him do that?" How dare like I took these because I was working for other nonprofits, really, because Roanoke has some. I mean, every place has problems. You can go to the most affluent place like in Roanoke. I stuck around Roanoke for 20 years because I was getting paid pretty good to be a social demographer, a social scientist. And I used to travel all over the East, from New York City to Florida to Texas to Chicago, and that was my little circle of looking at what was going on in the universe of the social demographics of America. And Roanoke was the microcosm of it all. You know, what is dragon energy? So, what's a dragon, right? It's a scaled creature, kind of a reptile, and it can breathe fire, so it has fire in its belly, and it can fly. So it basically, and it also has a lot to do with water. That's something that most people don't realize, that because they're snakes. Snakes like water. And so a lot of people say, "Oh no, they can't stand water because it puts out their fire." No, it makes steam, and steam is way more powerful than just fire. So, so that's, and the other thing about dragons is they are, of all of the animal totems or spirit guides, they're the ones that kind of, like all Aquarians, encompass every sign. They get along with everybody, or they kill everyone, one or the other. But meaning, and they don't have, they're not jealous. They're not vengeful. They're pretty, they're pretty, like when they get going, it's like, whoa. But if you can take it out of your prejudiced position, you would see that they're not, wreaking hell on earth. You know, what they are is they are a creature that encompasses many transformative energies. And dragon energy helps transform situations, actions, and situations. So I hope that helps with the description of dragon energy. Okay, we're going on an hour and 42 minutes. Let's see. Steamy snakes, that's true. Yep, that's it. The art of dreaming. Okay, so a shaman is a person who lives in dream time. So as I was discussing this on Johnny's little things, he picked that up and said, I said, this is, because I used to live in Australia and I used to do what is known as a walkabout with, the shamans of the tribe, of the Walmajiri. And this was a tribe that in 1971, there were maybe 1,100 folk scattered across the Walmajiri, the Northern Territory. And then, it was out in the middle of the desert. No one cared. And whenever the white ranchers needed the guys to bring in the sheep or bring in the cows, these guys were the best at it. So they were like, allowed to, eke out an existence in the desert because they knew the desert. I mean, they weren't eking out. I mean, they knew everything to eat. The desert in Australia has a ton of water. You look out this way, one dimensional, looks like a desert. But if you walk about, there are all these kind of corroborees, these little things that indentures that go into the ground. And it's cool down there, and there's water down there, and there's running water, and there's rivers and lakes and all kinds of really amazing plants and spirits down there. But the white people can't deal with it. Like Ayers Rock, it's a gigantic rock in the geographic center of Australia. It's red, it's iron ore. And it's a rock, so it's not a mountain that you can use pilons and all the climbing apparatus. I mean, if you try to nail anything, the thing, it breaks off. So you can't climb it the way Europeans climb things. So white guys couldn't climb up there. And it's about the size of Manhattan. So once you get up there, you got like the size of Manhattan to walk around in. And so this one white guy was like, out there looking at his cows, and he looks over at Ayers Rock and he pulls out his binoculars and he sees this just bunch of black guys on top of Ayers Rock. So he rides over there because he's watching them walk down the side of the friggin' thing, like 90 degrees down. And he meets them down at the bottom and says, "How do you guys get up there?" And they go, "Well, there's a path." And he goes, "Well, we don't know it." He said, "Well, we never showed it to you." He goes, "Will you show me?" He said, "Yeah, okay." And he says, "Wait right here." He rides back and he gets a gigantic tub of whitewash and he follows them up, leaving a dotted line up the side of Ayers Rock. And from that point on, which was like, 1912 or before or after World War One, he owns that rock. He builds a little motel at the bottom, a little restaurant, and makes it a tourist thing. And he brings the tourists walking up the side. And hardly anybody went up there. It wasn't a big deal. But if you took the bus, down through the Northern Territory, you'd stop there. And I went on that tour with when it was a tourist trap. But the what happened was in 1971, they found iridium, titanium, gold, and uranium on these people's territory. So instead of going out there and making a deal with them, they went out there and shot everyone in the head and left them in the desert for the buzzards to eat. Well, there's a handful of them that, the here they are right here. These guys here. This is what was left of the 1100s. See that little baby? That's Jesus Christ. He was in, there was no males there that made that woman pregnant, right? That baby is 3 weeks old. He looks like he's 3 years old, right? And she was only pregnant 7 months. And look what's around his head. A halo. He used to make, and there's me. Look how thin I am. And there were so many insects that I used to wear this kind of gauze over my head. Plus, it was the sun was like a microwave oven there. And down below is my little dingo dog, and he was always trying to drag me into dream time. And see the guy with the cowboy hat? He was the shaman. The girls were much more powerful alchemists. But he was the storyteller. He was the griot. And he took me, over the whole valley and showed me all the sacred sites, and we did ceremonies together where we'd be out in the middle of nowhere, and he'd stop, and he would know GPS or anything, and there'd know, like, oh, there's a tree over there, there's a rock over here. It's just dirt. And he'd kneel down, he'd dig a little hole, and he'd pull out a red Samsonite plastic suitcase, and he'd open it up, and there'd be some string, some feathers, some dirt, and some twigs. And he would take the dirt and he would put it in his palm and he'd urinate on it and turn it into mud. And then he'd put it all over his face. And when he urinated on it, it would be different colors. I mean, it was all in the suitcase. It all looked kind of like dirt. But when he'd take a little clump of this dirt and urinate on it, and he'd draw white on his face. He'd blacker than black, and then red and green and blue, and he'd build a mask of a spirit on his face. And then we'd do a ceremony where he would tie the twigs together and turn it into an animal, a snake, a bird, a koala. And when I went out to do this, I was kind of sponsored by the federal government to, figure out where these guys' sacred sites so they could put a fence around it. And when they dug it up for the minerals, they wouldn't disturb that sacred site. So, see, we have respect for these guys, even though we shot 1,100 of them in the head in 1971. Anyway, but these guys saw their whole valley as sacred, not just where the suitcase was buried. So, and we went out to 12 different sites. They had 12 red Samsonite suitcases. This would have made a great commercial, And I had a 16 millimeter Bolax camera that the government gave me, and they owned the film. And I had a changing bag, and I had metal canisters that the film came in, and I had lead paper bags that I would put the film can in, and then put it in another mailing bag. And then when somebody who was heading off to where it could be mailed, would send it back to the home office. And after they saw a couple of these things where, I did, 20 frames of us walking, walking here, walking there, and then finding, he says, okay, the site's nearby. I would do like, a minute of him finding the site. He would just walk up to it, pull the red suitcase out, start fooling around with it. I'd, stop, and then he would, get everything ready. Then he'd urinate, make the mask. I'd make the film. Anyway, I made about 4 of those and sent it off back to the home office. And this is where I'm out in the middle of. There is no water. There is no buildings. My wife and I were sleeping on the ground, right? Anyway, so they came, they found us, and they said, how did you manipulate the film to show, like I have a laboratory to do this? No. Do I, optical things that can, no. Did I have a green screen? No. No, guys, this is real. And it was really interesting because we brought them to a couple of those sites and did the ceremony in front of them, and they still disbelieved. They couldn't see it because they couldn't suspend their disbelief because they were white PhD anthropologists and they knew more about the Aborigines than the Aborigines. Really? Well, kind of. It's like nomenclature. What these guys, see, these guys are there all the time. They're in dream time all the freaking time. Meaning, before I even knew I was going to Australia, I had dreams about them. They came to me. This night I was in Sydney when we had this terrible airplane ride from LAX to Sydney. And I ended up sitting on a park bench and went missing for 72 hours. I went away with them. I was only going to be there for 6 months. I ended up there 3 years. Yes, we have, yes, we are meat puppets, but we do, our consciousness has a reason to be here. We created our free will. We broke out of love's co-creation, and we stuck ourselves in the prison of these meat puppet bags, and we get reincarnated over and over again until we can reconnect with that unconditional love of love. And that's why the end of times ain't coming soon. And Jesus is always here. He's right frigging here. That little kid was Jesus Christ. And he was murdered in the 90s when he became a social activist, in Sydney. The police walked up to him and blew his brains out, just like this guy that the Saudi Arabian guys whacked, And that's probably, he was Jesus too, meaning Jesus is always here. That's why we have done so much stupid shit that we shouldn't be here. We should be toast. I mean, global warming isn't from your SUV. It's from the hydrogen bombs that were let off in the late 40s and 50s out there in Australia, the Walla Missile Range, where English government and the American government, there's a place called Alice Springs, the Walla Missile Range, that makes Area 51 look like Disneyland. There's more weird shit up there, more Nazis, more time travelers, more weird shit than you can shake a stick at. And in the late 40s and 50s, they sent on Nike Zeus missiles hydrogen bombs up into the troposphere and detonated them up there. And what they did was they blew the shit out of the ozone. It wasn't like, it wasn't people's hairspray or refrigerants. No, it was guys blowing hydrogen. And they didn't just do it once, they did it over and over again. And what it did was it not only blew a hole in ozone, but it rang our solar system like a bell and blew time chunks out of the sun. And Solar Warden, our solar system, we're kind of locked in a prison. We kind of can't get out of it. And so we have sent starships through the sun to go to other dimensions and other solar systems and other places. And that was all being done at Brookhaven National Laboratory before World War II by the Nazis. The Thule Society was there back before Adolf even got started, you know? And that's why, I mean, Tesla had the whole Suffolk County as one gigantic phased array energy grid, you know? And that's why the Montauk experiments were started in the 1890s. And, if you just homework, just go Google, Montauk experiment, go Google Brookhaven National Laboratories time travel, and little things will pop up, and then you follow that thread to some place that'll take you, and constantly mention Tesla, Steinmetz, and Einstein. Those three guys did all of this. And, someone once asked Einstein, "Who's this? Are you the smartest man?" And he said, "No, Nikola Tesla is the smartest man in the world, and smartest man. I think he said the smartest man that ever was." And there's a great, the Philadelphia experiment. They were all involved in that, and so Solar Warden is out there in the solar system, and that's why, the Solar Observatory went down a few weeks ago, and all of our big telescopes in space, Hubble and the Changrel and the Solar Max, they're all been taken offline, and those buoys. That's why the Russian, the Russian booster is like, the thing never breaks. It's like, it's been around forever, and they couldn't get into space. Someone's keeping us out. Something's going on. Like out there in the deep green where I am, it didn't, the trees haven't turned colors. They were green up until last week when we had a ring of the Hurricane Michael kind of came through. And I'm in a place that I can look. I'm on top of Sawtooth Mountain Range, but I'm down below. So I'm at a very interesting, it's a very sacred place, The moron who built it had no idea what it was. So when that came through, I could see the harp waves in the clouds. So somebody was dumping a lot of juice into those clouds. And what happened was almost over a day, just in a day, the leaves went from green to being, they were still green on the trees, and they popped off the trees, and as they fluttered down, they didn't turn colors. They crisped. And when they hit the ground, they were burnt, microwaved. So there's a lot of weird stuff going on, and that's why I started with my little 40 days in series, because, this whole thing, you just look at all of these things, like our debt went through the roof, right? And that's because they gave this tax break to the corporate world and to all of the top, 0.004% richest people. They're not paying any taxes, right? And they've increased the defense budget by $60 billion just this year, above the 100 or 400 billion that they're already going to spend. And so our debt went up by 40%. And I forgot who the moron senator was. That deficit's a problem, but what we're going to have to do is cut entitlements. We're going to have to get rid of Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security. Well, no, those aren't entitlements. They're not a gift from the government, especially Social Security. Kids, you're paying into it. It's a savings program. It's supposed, it's not their money, it's your money. And the Fed has been writing IOUs, giving the only reason the Social Security is kind of on the edge of bankruptcy is that the federal government has taken more than three-quarters of it away and just stuck IOUs in their way. And that's why China and us are having this little tit, because they own half of our, or more than half of our treasury bonds, which are useless. And the only reason they're worth anything is that the dollar is the planetary money. But, England, who was the last empire before us, the pound sterling was the planetary financial money. And then, Egypt wanted to, flex its muscle and wanted to organize. That's when, all the oil producers kind of got together and say, why should we let BP tell us what our oil's worth and just give us these pieces of paper saying this is worth a pound sterling? No. And so that's why they went and took the Erie, I'm not the Erie, the Suez Canal. And England sent their navy and military there to, punch Egypt in the nose. And Egypt kicked their butt, right? And when that happened, it changed the whole geopolitical story. And bottom line, England fell. It became a third-rate country, And go take a look at that. And that's where, I mean, we were already, after World War II, we had already taken ascendancy, but we had been England's bitch since, the Revolutionary War. England let us win so we could get full of ourselves. And then they came up the Potomac and the War of 1812, burned everything to the ground and said, you do what we say or we kill you all. So, that is happening to America. And this whole thing with China and the United States, China, Venezuela, which has another big chunk of oil, Russia, that has lots of oil, want to make a new currency, electronic currency, and India too. And China and India have already done this, meaning China, India that has like 1 billion something people, one weekend said, okay, all the banks are closed and your money is worthless. And on Monday, you're going to have a new app on your phone and that'll be your money. And if you're so poor and you don't have a phone, we'll give you a phone. And now in India, everyone just kind of taps their little phone on a little box at the store and they walk out with a bottle of milk. And if you've watched any commercials, you start to see that being shown on television. Oh, this is so convenient. You don't need a wallet. No one can blah, 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 blah. So we're going to have a little economic disruption. Maybe the internet will be taken offline completely, even though it was designed to survive a nuclear war. And then it'll come back on in a new and improved Facebook and internet that will be wired straight through 5G into your brain. And your new bank account, instead of having, like mine, has $6 in it. I have $6. But I'm living like a millionaire. And so I'm about to get in the jacuzzi. So they're going to give everyone 300,000 or $1 million of this new quasi cryptocurrency. And then the world economy will take off like a rocket ship. And not only that, the majority of the population will be taken off planet. They said, well, the planet, we're going to have to leave, it's like Wall-E, the movie, we're going to have to leave it. And everyone's going to go on a cruise ship and everyone will have their own personal floating lazy boy recliner and you'll have all the, stuff you ever want. Just all you'll do is get enemas and shop on Amazon from your lazy boy space recliner. And that's the world, it's called a dystopian world, And but the 0.0005% of the world's population, of the rich guys like Mr. Gates, that don't want the what Mr. Rockefeller used to call useless eaters. If there was ever a useless eater, Nelson and Rockefeller was it. And David, I knew both those guys pretty good. Ugh, scary monsters. They're both reptiles. But all of those guys are on the low end of the totem pole. They're all expendables too. The people who running the show, no one gets to see who they are. They're definitely behind a curtain. And it's not the Rothschilds. It's like, it's not even the queen, and she definitely is a reptile. So here it is. Oh, 2 hours and 5 minutes. So someone told me that the longer I can stay on, the better chances my algorithm will be pushed on to other folks. Okay, let's read some of your stuff. Let's see. Let's see. Okay. We have purpose. Yes, we have a purpose. Otherwise, never become this meat puppet. But dreaming is where I am most myself. This is true. That's where you're closest to who your consciousness is. But you can dream consciously. You can be awake and dream. I do. That's called dream. That's where dream time is. You're walking around in your meat puppet, but you're still connected to your higher conscious. Sensei Alba, do you think we could find Tinkerbell Lady? Yes. If my voice is starting to get a little raspy, and that jacuzzi is calling me. Maybe later. What time is it now? It's 9:10. Let me luxuriate, and I'll come back on at 10:30, right? And I will do a guided meditation. And all of you who can go back into my thing, and find the guided meditation I did 50 or so YouTubes back. It's in the middle somewhere. It's called, Setting Yourself Free or something like that. And all you really have to do is breathe 20% more than you normally do. And 30, you don't have to say, you don't have to be given a mantra or anything like that. I mean, the only reason people talk about that is that Christianity and Hinduism and Judaism and Islam all have, they're all the same religion, basically. They're all monotheistic in their own kind of cultural way. And they're also, the one that's the most monotheistic is, Islam. Because, they say, we worship Jesus and he's an idol. And no, Islam really loves Jesus. They think he's a cut above the Prophet Muhammad, praise be his name. But he's in the same ballpark, right? And Jesus is a pitcher, and the Prophet Muhammad, praise be his name, is like a third baseman or shortstop or catcher. Anyway, I don't think baseball fits it too well, but they're all basically the same religion, and so they all pray, right? They pray in churches, and they do it together, and they say the same prayer. And what that does is it forces you to breathe 20% more in and 30% more out. And what that does is our mind, up here, this isn't where you are. If you want to know where you are here. You are in your gut. In your gut, you have trillions of little bugs that have consciousness themselves. There's more intelligence in your colon than in your brain. Your brain is just a hard drive. It just has kind of stuff, patterns stored there. Just, forget about it. It's not what your consciousness is. And and the little creatures in your gut are like the Wi-Fi to the server, right? So, And that's why people get colon cancer, because they're so disconnected from their server that, they get bad code all the time and they get cancer. So if you want to see the little firefly, what you need to do is breathe deep and in 20% and out 30%. And what that does, it consciously makes you focus the monkey up here in the squirrel cage to shut up. I mean, if you've ever watched any of the YouTubes I did on John's channel with John, the little squirrel in his brain can't shut up. That squirrel just keeps throwing stuff out. And that's what is so humorous about those videos, because I'm trying to tell you a story like I am now, and he interrupts it at the quintessential point. When I'm about to give you the information, he says something just, off the hook. But in a shamanic way, he's adding like an exclamation point. Because if you go back and look at all those things, every time he does that, that's the most important point of the story. So I just kind of go on. Here's 2 hours and 10 minutes, and I'm gonna definitely get into that jacuzzi when this thing gets 2 hours, 20 minutes, and 22 seconds. That's definitely my cutoff time. But then I'll come back at 10:30 ish. Because it's now 9:15, 10:30 ish, and I will do a guided meditation. And I will introduce you. I will take you to Olga Kluver's little paradise behind the mirror, and I will show you your Akashic record, and I will show you your door of the 9 doors, that will take you over the bridge to your superconscious mind of your sanctuary of your own choosing. Okay, so you want to meet her, Olga? We'll meet. You'll meet her. Okay, so it's 2 minutes 11. So I'm not going to wait. 2 minutes and 22 minutes. I mean, 2 hours and 22 minutes is like, but I might cut off before because I want to save my voice. So let's see what other stuff you guys have said. Let's see. Dystopian world, why pay taxes for crap? That's true. Why pay crap? Yeah. You don't have to. I didn't tell you not to, but you don't have to. Okay, let's see what other here. Yep. You paid for everything. You paid for everything a zillion times over. It's time for you to step up. And the only way you can step up is with love through your community. And every time I did that, we did miracles. That's when we took over 50 buildings and housed 500 homeless families in New York City. Right? And then the city tried to fight us for 3 years. We had really great lawyers. And like when they sent the bully boy cops in, we read them poetry until they loved us and they couldn't beat us up anymore. You can do all this with love. The same thing with the Shore and Power Plant. The Rockefellers and Morgan Trust, bullied their way to open that plant. And before it could blow up and kill everyone, when they did the test, it melted every wire in that plant. And Mario Cuomo, who we stayed in his face for 5 years, said, okay. And we showed him he had the legal responsibility to protect the citizens of New York State. And he did. He basically bought Long Island Lighting Company and turned it back to New York Power Authority. And basically Morgan Trust said, fine, we'll make the same amount of money as if we turn this thing on, and now you'll own the problem. You'll have to decommission, not us. And you'll have to, if it blows up, it's your fault. So they went along with it. But we saved Long Island, New York State. We saved about 1 million people's lives. Handful of people. Started out 6 grandmas and me. And I went to this thing called the Chat Alliance. And it was a moron, it was a bunch of, it's just like the Democratic Party. It was the Democratic Party. All the, you know what liberals are? People who feel guilty about being racist or prejudiced, and not just racism, they're prejudiced against everything. You know, left and right are just two wings of the same corporate bird. It's all about distracting the masses, giving you an illusion of that you got a choice. You don't have a choice unless you take it, right? And we did out in Suffolk County, Long Island, Shoreham, Long Island. We made the choice, a small group, and then we kept educating the next person, the next person, and within 2 years, we had 24,000 people coming to our first civil disobedience. We had all of the police departments in Suffolk and Nassau County that were in a 100-mile radius come and protect us. And the municipality that we were in, we convinced them that if this plant's open, you're toast, kids. And so they didn't arrest us. They gave us summonses that the fine was 25 cents. And they, when you go to a nightclub and they put those little bands, every time you got arrested and summons and you paid your 25-cent fine, they put one of these bands around your wrist. And once you had 5 bands, you couldn't know what you went and did. You helped because there were a lot of people who, laid their bodies down on the line. And once you got your 5 bands, you went and helped the police carry those people away. And we had wheelchairs that we would put the limp people into a wheelchair and roll it over to the judge. And he would give them a summons for 25 cents, put a band around their wrist, and they would walk over and lie down again. And it was mostly a theatrical play for the people to watch and see what it is. We did things like we went and got junker cars that could barely run and then drive them onto the northern state and Long Island Expressway, and we would slow them down, and we'd have the cars filled with tires and soaked in kerosene, and we'd stop 3 cars abreast, and then 4 cars behind them that didn't have tires in them, and then set the cars, with big space, and then set the cars on fire. And we would tell the fire departments and the police where we were going to do this, and when we stopped traffic, they would be there to put the fire out. And they were part of the civil disobedience because we wanted to show the people of New York State and Long Island what it would be like to try and get 250,000 people off of Long Island, because there were 250,000 people that lived east of Shoreham, and it was an island. There was no place. There was only Long Island Expressway, 6 lanes, 3 lanes each, and northern states that had 4 lanes, and that was the only way you're going to get 250,000 people. Can you imagine trying to, Anyway, so that started with 6, ended up with about 500 people who were there every weekend. And we had food and music. We started a thing called Long Island Life Community. I started on Valentine's Day. I wasn't too prepared. I didn't have any tents and it was fleeting. The only thing I had was garbage bags. So we're wearing garbage bags with our little signs out there. And people were going, what the? And this rich guy stopped and said, what are you guys doing out here? And we explained it to him, because we had the 411 down. And he said, I just bought a big mansion. I said, buddy, you are toast. He went and bought us a wedding tent and put it up that day and brought 6 Lazy Boy recliners. And then he had friends who were in the music business, like Billy Joel and others who lived out there. And when they were free, they would come and play music. And we kind of basically advertised, hey, every Friday, Billy Joel's going to be here playing. Of course, he wasn't. He was like maybe there 3 times a year at his, throwing of the dice. So some Friday, because we always had music and food. And this guy would have chicken and food out there for everybody. And so it was the best fun place to go. And if you want to do anything, like what I see about most movements today, they're like some really depressing, anal retentive, dental, it's like the cat in Little Shop of Horrors. You know, the guy who goes to the dentist and lets the dentist pull his teeth out without Novocaine, and the dentist is on nitrous oxide. Anyway, oh, I'm getting close at 2222. Anyway, so that was just a handful of people. And because we were totally connected to love's co creation, and we never gave up because we won legal battles in the Supreme Court. Dick Cheney and George H.B. Bush and Donnie would sign executive orders, overpowering that. And it wasn't until the last day when God intervened and set a thunderstorm onto that plant. We're like a mile away and it's sunny, and this gigantic storm right just over the plant hit it with thousands of lightning bolts. The next day, they do low power tests, they hit the switch, and all the wires melt. That's it, end of the plant. And Lilco goes, well, we're just going to go back and pull it all out and rewire it and do it all. We have the licenses. We can. And that's when Mario Cuomo stood up. I had to, I always thought he was a sock puppet, but that's one time he stood up and said, nope, you're not going to do that. And that's because we didn't give up. If you don't give up, you win, you know? And if you don't get angry, if you don't project your fear and anger onto the other will not attack you back. So let's see what else did you say in this thing. Yep, you got it. Yep, thank you. Okay, so 10:30, be here or be square, and we're going to do a guided meditation where I'm going to introduce you to Uga Kluber. Yep, it should be fun. Okay, it's 2:21 and 31 seconds, so we got a few more minutes for me to tell you how much I love you all. And stay in touch. Remember, contact me at the dude awake 42 at Gmail. That's where we can talk, uh, eye to eye. But I like this. This was a good chat here. You guys were really good. And there's 9 of you. So let's see here. We're coming up to 2:22, and it's 2:22. Now it's 2:22 and 2 seconds. And I'll just keep telling you how much I love you. And I'll see you at 10:30 thereabouts. And I need to drink some water and get a cough drop because I've been talking for a long time and my voice is a little scratchy. But I love you guys. Here it is.